My name's Marty and welcome to this instructional video series on building your own STH style guitar kit from Guitar Kit World. In the following video, I'm going to show you how I put together this guitar, including all aspects of the build from finishing, installing hardware, connecting up the electronics, and then performing a final setup at the end just to ensure the guitar plays great. So if you've never put together a kit guitar yourself before or are concerned you don't have any specialist tools, don't worry. I'm not a luthier myself or even that particularly handy, but just about anyone can put together a guitar like this with some basic tools and just a little bit of patience. Okay, so the guitar we're working on today is an STH style guitar kit. As you can see, it's a semi-hollow body guitar. We've got a mahogany body, maple neck, and engineered ebony fretboard with mother of pearl dot inlays. We've got two soap bar style P90 pickups, tune-o-matic bridge, and a floating Jazzmaster style tremolo system. We've got a three-way selector switch, one volume and one tone. Okay, so from here, I'm going to roll the video back to the very start and we'll begin the job by inspecting the body for any marks or scratches. What I normally do is just hold the guitar at different angles in the light and look for any marks or scratches. You're generally going to see marks and scratches, machine marks and things like that around the bottom of the guitar and occasionally around the horns as well. When you're sanding, just sand with the grain. Don't press too hard and just be sure to unclog your paper as needed. Now, once we've done that, the next thing we really need to do is just check the neck fit. So it's important that you've got a tight fitting neck. It shouldn't be so tight that you can barely get it into the neck pocket, but it shouldn't be so loose that you've got sideways movement either. So what you want to do is push the heel of a neck in first and then bring it down flat. And as you can see, there's no sideways movement with that neck. That's a good fit. So before we start grain filling or applying finish of any sort, one of the first things we need to do is also mask off any of these cavities. Today we're going to be using a pre-tinted grain fill, which hopefully should make the grain pattern of this guitar pop a little under the more translucent stain finish we'll be doing over the top. Grain fill like this should be mixed to a fairly runny consistency, something like glue. I've added about 20% water to the product here, but just check the manufacturer's recommendations on the product you're using. It's likely to be similar. So next, using a clean rag, I'll start working the grain filler into the body of the guitar. Just first of all coming across it like so, working with the grain. And the idea is we really work as much of this into the grain as possible. Now, just before you design your own headstock, just a couple of things to keep in mind. So if you're designing your own, just be sure to mark out where the tuning pegs go or where the tuning peg holes go. You don't want to cut your headstock too close to the tuning holes. I'd recommend keeping at least 15 mil to the center of the hole, which is the equivalent of a typical spacing between tuning peg holes, for example. Always cut well outside the lines as well. You've got plenty of room to work with when it comes time to start dressing the cut you've made by sanding it back or filing. And if you don't have specialist tools, just keep the shape simple. So using hard lines rather than too many curves. A well-executed simple design often looks better than a poorly executed complex design, for example. It's also worth masking off the headstock at the top and the bottom to ensure you don't leave scratches when you're cutting out your shape. And don't just focus on staying outside the lines, also focus on keeping your saw relatively straight. Okay, so we've cut out a headstock shape, our template. What I'll do next is position that on the headstock where I want it to be and clamp that on. As we can see, that's our headstock cut out. I've left the guitar overnight. I've given it 2 coats of grain fill. I removed any excess about 20 minutes after I first put it on with a rag, and now we've just got some excess here to sand away. So when you're sanding grain fill, it's fairly simple, but all we really want to do is just sand down to the surface of the timber. So the idea of it is just to remove anything that's sitting on the surface and leave the product that's filled the pores. So to do that, I'd recommend starting with 120 grit paper, working up to maybe 180 and then up to about 220. It's unnecessary really to go any higher than that at this stage, and definitely don't skip your grades of paper either. So what I'll do is just sand away a section in this lower horn, and I'll work my way through the grades, and then I'll show the section that I've sanded and just show how it should look. Okay, so if I bring the camera down for a closer view, But the pores, the heavy grain and the heavy lines in the timber are now filled with the product, but we've sanded away the surface, the excess. What I'm going to do next is apply some poly. So I'm using a wipe on poly from Feast Watson. It's an oil-based product. Never wipe anything on using a rag. Just fold the frayed edges in, just so there's no chance of any fibres ending up in the finish on the guitar that you're applying. And just fold over one more. So you've got a nice workable pad. And then just take some of the poly on the rag. And we'll start applying. Okay, so it's been a day since we oiled the base of this guitar. As you can see, thanks to masking off the top there, we've got some nice, we've got a really nice defined line. So what we want to do next, as per my previous plan, is to now mask off this section, and we'll be staining this with staining the top with a light brown. So I'll quickly mask off the body. Okay, so I'm just coming back. It's been about 10 to 15 minutes. I've just got another clean rag. I'm just going to start wiping away any of that excess that's sitting on the surface. What we want to do next is start looking at finishing the neck while the body's drying. So I've already sanded this down to 240, then 320. And lastly, I'm going to finish it off with some 400 grit. So just also using a razor, just wrap your sandpaper around that to get to harder to reach areas, or if you want to have some sort of backing there to handle some of these curves. Now, the next thing I want to do is mask off those tuning holes. So if we get too much gunk and stuff built up in there, you'll have a problem installing the tuning holes later, or tuning the tuners later, I should say. Okay, so I'm using fine buffing oil, which is a combination of tung oil, which will absorb into the timber, and wax, which will sit on the outside. So just get some product on my rag and simply apply as per usual. Okay, so after we oiled the STH neck yesterday, next thing I want to do is finish this body. So I'm going to be using a fine buffing oil, which is a mixture of tung oil and wax. And the tung oil absorbs into the timber, the wax then sits on the outside and gives us a protective layer, which you can then buff up to a really nice finish. From here, it's just a matter of getting some of this oil in our rag and getting it on the guitar. So next thing I want to do is remove this masking that we've had in place now for a few days and attach the neck. So we'll do that next. Put the neck here. As I said, now because this was an all finished neck, I haven't bothered masking this off or sanding this down, for instance, as it's just an all finish. It's really not going to affect things too much. So as we do, neck heel in first. And push flat, and then from there flip the guitar over. So in your packaging you've got your neck plate and 4 large screws. So neck plate just simply goes on the back here like so.